Welcome to Our Nona. My name is Kevin Kendrick. I'm your host. And here we get the opportunity to interview local business owners, community leaders, and amazing nonprofit organizations. And today I am joined with my friend, Felipe Navarrete, and with Northwestern Mutual. And not only are you my friend, you're also my financial wealth advisor. And so Felipe, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. Absolutely.
Well, Felipe, this is not our first interview that we've done together. But I always enjoy sitting down talking to you because I always enjoy, one, your story, and then I always enjoy hearing how you can help other families and other people achieve wealth in the current market that we're in. So take us back because you're living the American dream. Tell us a little bit about your background growing up in another country. When did you come to the United States? And when did you feel like you've achieved that American dream?
Oh, wow. Well, that definitely takes me back to memory lane here. But I'm originally from Santiago, Chile. I was born in Santiago, but then we moved to Viña del Mar when I was only 3 years old. And Viña del Mar is this beautiful coast city in Chile. It's usually where they do one of the biggest concerts in South America called the Festival de Viña. And so I grew up there until I was 14 years old. And my mother moved to the United States first when I was 10. So I actually wasn't able to see my mother for 4 years because of the different, immigration laws and et cetera. And so, but when I was 14, I was able to come visit her. And that summer, Chilean summer, winter of the United States, right? Different hemispheres. I decided to stay with her. I decided, I know it's going to be hard. I know it's going to be a different experience, different country, language, culture, but I'm with my mom, and my mom is everything. I'm very close to her. Her and I are, very, very close. Like, I'm going to have coffee with her right after this. So, and I decided to stay, and I was 14 years old. I grew up here in Orlando. I went to Colonial High School, and then I graduated, went to Valencia as a dual enrollment student. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. We didn't have any money growing up, if I'm very truthful about it. And as immigrants, we had a rough time, and financially. So when I moved to Valencia, I knew I was going to end up at UCF eventually. And as I work myself into UCF, I started thinking, what's going to be my degree? I knew it was going to be business, but I decided to go with finance because I took a class of finance and I fell in love with it. When I learned how to use that financial calculator and what present value and future value meant and how money could grow over time, I started realizing, well, I can use this to retire my parents because they've worked so hard to give us, this amazing opportunity to live in this country. And I wanted to give it back to them and being able to retire them. And that's why I chose, to finish a degree in finance. And
So you graduated from UCF. Let's fast forward a little bit. You're now married with children. Why did you and your wife decide to land in Lake Nona? Like, how did that come about?
Well, because I went to Colonial, East Orlando was always
You're
our
kind of not far.
thing. I mean, we're not too far.
For those that don't know, Colonial's probably 15, 20 minutes north of Lake Nona.
Of Lake Nona, yep. And we used to live in Cimarron and California area. And so we always kind of knew about what was going on the side of Lake Nona. We heard the noise. We heard that, hey, there's a lot of great things coming. And, at the time we didn't pay much attention to it. When I was still studying, I was able to purchase my first property down in Cimarron when properties were only $25,000. And that was the first property we ever purchased with my wife. So we lived, close enough, right? Cimarron and Pershing. And then, all of a sudden we started looking for properties in town. I was like, you know what? I still want to stay on the east side of Orlando. I feel like that's my area. And then Lake Nona came about. It's like, oh, well, let's go look around. And then when I went to Lake Nona, I hadn't been in this area for a while, and I started seeing all the development and everything that was going on, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with the project. I fell in love with, the vision of what the city could be and how we were going to care about not only the well-being professionally, but also the well-being of us mentally, physically. Like there's so much advancements when it comes to medicine as well as sports. Now there's technology coming our way, which I'm super excited about. So that all excitement transferred to me, and I said, you know what, we're gonna be residents of Lake Nona, and as a financial planner, I wanna partner up with Luis Rodriguez, which we're partners on this, and was like, let's be the wealth management planning company of here, Lake Nona.
Yeah, and one of the things you talked about as far as like the businesses and the types of businesses that have come to Lake Nona is, we often get compared to Horizons West on the west side of town. An interesting thing, they always talk about, they're building the same types of homes, in Horizons West that they're building in Lake Nona. But I always stop them and I say, well, yeah, it might be the same homes, but we actually have jobs. And we're not talking jobs at Publix and McDonald's and small mom and pop restaurants. We have, major businesses and major corporations that have come and put their flag in the Lake Nona corridor and said, we want to open up shop here because we believe in what's happening here in our community, which, as a wealth advisor, that benefits you and your family. As a real estate agent, helps, me and my family. And so I like the fact that we have businesses that have said, hey, we want to plant here and we want to grow as Lake Nona grows. Before we talk about, working with families, I always like to share the story how you and I met. We were talking about it earlier. You would call me. I didn't want to talk to you over the phone, but it was just happened to be that we met through mutual friends at a restaurant one night. And at that point, we started talking about something no one's ever really talked to me about, and that was reducing your tax liability. Real estate business was good for us, but we were still paying Uncle Sam a lot of money. And you said, hey, let me come alongside you and sit down with you. And I felt like I had the dream team between you, Nikki, and Justin, my accountant and my attorney. And so we created like this team, and I really enjoy when we're able to get together. But talk to me, and I know you don't do it just for me, because you do it for all of your clients. What are you looking for specifically when you see someone like a Kevin Kendrick or a Veronica Figueroa, and you're like, man, they're giving too much to Uncle Sam? Like, walk me through that.
Yeah, and I think also it comes to philosophy, right? What are taxes, right? Taxes are there, to fund our government, for our government to give us benefits as Americans, right? And that's a noble thing, right, for us to do. But there is a code that we all need to follow, and there's a code that gives us certain incentives for us to reduce our tax liability so we can reinvest that back into the economy.
Right.
Create jobs, right? Like when we hire an employee, that's good for America, right? There's another employment, there's more money circulating in someone else's hands, right? So there's an incentive for me as a business owner or as a self-employed to hire someone so I can reduce my tax liability and transfer that, cash flow to another person's hands so they can go and consume. Right. And we are, I was just reading an article the other day, it's like 70% of consumption, of America makes up a large portion of our GDP.
Right.
Which is massive. And,
and
so that's the importance of it.
And it's interesting this time of the year, maybe a month ago, but everyone's eager to get their tax return back.
Yeah.
And I was always of that mindset, like, I'm going to get money back from the government. And then I didn't realize until after I met with you, like, no, I don't want to get money back.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather pay, but pay as little as possible than get money back. That lets them know I've overpaid.
Yeah.
One of the things as a wealth advisor is I know you're very dynamic as far as like, with us, we've done 401ks, we've done Roth IRAs, we've done different types of investments. Let's talk about age. You've got children. My boys are older. You've met with my youngest son.
Yeah.
What's the right age to sit down with, to sit down with our kids and start talking about saving and maybe even investing into their future?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you're asking me that. Kevin.
And that was not a set question. That was like just you and I having conversations in the past.
Absolutely. And, I'm glad that you asked me that because I'm so passionate about finance and what you can do with money if you organize your money. And I think a lot of what we do at Northwestern Mutual is organize, right? It's let's organize your thoughts. Let's start with the end goal in mind. And let's organize your cash flows, your balance sheet, and let's make adjustments and movements so that way we can reduce tax liability, reinvest that money back into your businesses, back into your net worth, and help, the family net worth keep growing. So going back to your children, everyone, it's a little bit different on how they want to educate their children, but I personally believe that children should be educated with money at a very early age. And I'll tell you that because Noah and Alexandra, who are my kids, they're currently turning 10 and she's turning 8. I've been talking to them about money since probably Noah was around 4 to 5 years old. Right. And basic things, right? It's like, hey, here's money. I give it to you. Now you have a choice. You can go spend it and now you don't have any money anymore. Or you can go invest it and make that money grow and then have more money in the future or have passive income or have dividends or interest being generated from that money. And now you have money every year that you can go and spend. Right? So it's changing a little bit of that mentality of like, I need to go earn money to spend it. It's like, what if I earn money, spend some of it, invest some of it, so in the future I can spend down my dividends and interest that money is generating for me instead of just spending my hard-earned income.
Yeah, and I think, I'm a Gen Xer, so my parents are boomers, and they didn't really talk to me about money other than credit cards were bad, but they didn't really say why credit cards were bad. And I remember my youngest son, he was probably in 3rd grade, so that's 8 or 9 years old. And we were playing a Monopoly game, but the Monopoly game came with debit cards. And so we're playing this game, and we're literally putting everything on the debit card. So then we go to the Lego store out at Disney Springs, and that's what he's been seeing us do is put it on the credit card. Well, he wanted a Lego thing, and he's like, and I said, no, we're not going to pay for that. That's too expensive. And he said, well, just put it on the card. Because he's seeing us playing this game. And then, of course, we're going to restaurants. So everything's been on plastic, and you just get what you want.
Yep.
And that was a red flag. So we switched to cash. So now, and my son, he's seen over the years, because now he's 20, yep. He's seen us that, I like to carry cash. I like to pay for things in cash. And that way, if you have cash, you can afford it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have cash, guess what?
You can't afford it.
You can't afford it.
Yep.
And so, he's a 20-year-old student who he likes to invest. You've met with Brandon several times.
Very smart.
And I'm blown. I wish I would have known what he knows, and I'm 32 years older than him. So I really wish I would be able to do that. Let's talk about, since we're talking about age, I met with someone the other day, and they said, and they're probably in their 50s, probably early to mid 50s. And they said, I don't have any retirement saved up. Okay. I don't think there's ever a time to say it's never too late. But for those that are maybe in their 30s and beyond, like, what would be the steps to get started, even if they're putting away just a little bit?
Yeah. Well, and I would say to everyone watching, do your research. And there's one concept that I would love for everyone to go research after this conversation, which is compound interest.
Amen.
Compound interest. Understand that concept. And the reason is because this is the best way compound effect or compound interest can be described. If you ever play with a laser, right? When you point the laser at your hand right here, and you pivot it just a little bit, it doesn't move much when you're looking at it from a very short distance.
Right.
But what happens if I point the laser down that wall over there and I pivot it just like this?
It goes up like half a foot, if not more.
That is the power of compound interest and compound effect. And I say compound effect because there's also a book called Compound Effect that I would recommend everyone to read this book. That it's not just about the money compounding interest, rate of return wise, but every action that we make.
Right.
Right? If you constantly get mad at things, and you're constantly get mad and mad and mad, you're compounding this madness and projecting it in your own life over time. So that's why I call it compound interest, but also compound effect about every action that we take. So it is very important that you learn this concept, especially in your 20s.
Right.
Because if you can learn this, I was 20 years old when I learned this, and I've used that formula, since I was 20 years old, and that's why, I've been very blessed. My family's been very blessed that now we're in a position where I could step away from the work that I do and retire. But I choose to stay here because I love what I do. I love educating. I love, hanging out with my clients and keep educating our community. And so, if you can learn this at a very early age and apply it, you can do wonderful things in the future, and you're not going to have to be distracted by making money to spend money. It's like you can actually really focus on what you love doing and passionately doing on a daily basis.
Let's talk about investing outside of, maybe the market or within like 401ks. I know you've invested in local businesses. For those that are watching, like, how were those opportunities presented to you? Is it something that you went looking for, or was it something where you just happened to be in the right place at the right time, or maybe you just caught wind of something? Like, how did those opportunities present themselves?
It's a mixture of everything. I'd say number one, I've had a pretty solid amount of wealth already. Have in a very safe area already, and I was allowed myself to take a chunk of that, 10% of my entire net worth, and move it to something more risky, like a business, like, real estate flipping and stuff that it's a little bit more aggressive, right? And so I allow myself to say, you know what, now it's a good time for me to start diversifying into more aggressive opportunities. And so a lot of opportunities have presented to me. It's funny because a lot of people, I don't know if you've ever, heard of the iceberg, analogy, but a lot of people see me now, with my investments that I've made business-wise, and it's like, oh my God, that's great. It's almost luck. And I'm like, yeah, it was luck at the moment of my investment and the opportunity that presented itself. But I had failed in 5 different businesses prior. I've invested in 5 different businesses prior that I fell in every single one of them, before I found that one that made me money.
And I didn't mean to interrupt you. You used the word luck, because that's what people see. And there's a quote that I live by. It says, "The harder I work, the luckier I get."
Yeah.
Because it has nothing to do with luck. I mean, sometimes you can be in the right place at the right time. Yeah. But they don't see the iceberg analogy of, when I was building my real estate business, I was getting up at 4 o'clock every morning. Yeah. Now I get up at 5. I'm still getting up early, but I was working very diligently, very hard to kind of build what we've built today. Talk about the hard work that you've put in over the years.
Absolutely. That's also a compounding effect.
Yeah.
Right? So
it's true.
If you know that most people out there are working around 30 to 40 hours, and some of them may do overtime to the 45 or the 50 hours, right? If you are putting 80 hours a week or 90 hours a week, or some of us 100 and something hours because we never shut it off, right? Well, what's the compounding effect of someone working at 40 hours versus someone that is working 100 hours, right? And this is actually takes me to a conversation. Like a lot of companies are concerned about what's going on labor-wise in the United States. Like, what's going on? I feel like people don't want to work, and everyone just keeps saying, it's more efficient. We want more efficient work. Here's the reality. You can have very efficient work, but at the end of the day, you're still putting a certain amount of hours into the work. And so if we were used to, people that were working 60 hours, 90 hours a week, trying to succeed, and now you have people doing 30 hours a week, and trying to get the same results, right? That's not going to work out. And so now I feel like in the labor force, like it's almost like you need to like hire 2 people to do the job of 1 person back in the day.
Right.
Right. And this is really hurting, everyone's business.
Oh, absolutely. Let's talk about community involvement. It's very difficult to go anywhere in Lake Nona without seeing a Northwestern Mutual footprint. Like even today, I was sharing you the story. I'm going to lunch and I'm at the red light and I see, the Northwestern team walking across the street, with clients, and I roll down my window and I'm like, give them your money. But from whether it's through chamber events or whether it's through working with schools, why is it important for you and your Lake Nona Northwestern Mutual team to be involved and engaged?
Yeah, well, there's three things. Number one, it's the community impact, right? You just said it. Like that was our vision from the very beginning. Like we wanted to be the wealth management company in the community. Okay, so that's number one. So preserve that title in the Lake Nona community by being everywhere. And we invest heavily in being in organizations, giving back to the community. We always, every time there's a nonprofit in the community that needs help, like we're there to jump in and help. Not only help with money, but it's also helping with the structure, open up our network of clients and friends and members that we have in our community to come and help those nonprofit organizations for the right reasons. Number two, and this is the hardest part, is preserving that view of us, right? And that comes with integrity and doing the right thing. And I believe that what we've created, Luis and I, in our office is we've taken integrity very seriously, and we make sure that our advisors are out there doing the right thing, because it only takes one slip and fall to completely diminish your respect in the community. And number three is a marketing strategy. At the end of the day, we are running a business, right? So, at one time, one of my clients, said to me, look, we usually invest 5% of our revenues back into marketing every year. I was like, okay, well, if they're doing 5%, well, why don't we do 10%?
Yeah.
And then where is that going to take us? And that's when since we started, Luis and I, we've reinvested 10% of our revenue back into marketing every single year. And that's why you hear the comments that you're not the only one making the same comments.
Right.
Like, we're everywhere. And why? Because we truly believe in marketing.
Yeah, and I believe too, that kind of has that compound effect that you talked about earlier, because, we invested very heavily in the schools back in starting in 2016. So of course, you go in the schools consistently year over year over year. Teachers want to buy a house, they would call us. And we're always very thankful that they called us, because there's plenty of options. But we're going consistently. And I think that's one of the things that you guys do, is that you're very consistent with your marketing and very consistent with your brand.
Absolutely.
Sometimes people take, hey, let's not do this month, or hey, we did this for 3 months, let's stop and pull back. But the marketing side of it it's got to be consistent.
Yeah.
To get your name out there and continue. Speaking about consistent and continuing, if someone were new, and you advise business clients as well, so if we got a young entrepreneur, a young business person, what advice would you give to them if someone was starting a new business?
Network.
Yeah. Explain that.
Well, think about it. No matter what type of business you're trying to put out there, it could be a service business, it could be a product business. What's the one thing that's going to help no matter what business you have? Database.
Right.
Database. So the more network you're doing, the more networking you're doing, and the bigger the database of prospects and clients, right, the bigger exposure your brand is going to have out there.
Right.
So I would say if you're a brand new entrepreneur, brand new, business owner, you're going to have to invest a vast majority of your time networking and building your database, no matter what type of business you're owning.
Yeah, and I've learned too, when it comes to database, it would always annoy me when I would give them my card, and then I got put in their database within 24 hours, and I started getting emails. But as much as that annoyed me, I always said, well, why am I not doing that?
Yeah.
And so, we just recently, Nona Fest happened at the beginning of March, and, I went around and collected business cards. And I went back and I gave them to my assistant. I said, put them in the database.
Yeah.
And, whether they buy a house or not, maybe it's they want to, get interviewed. Maybe they have someone, to connect me with, or vice versa. So, I that's something I think I've even learned just recently, that everyone should be going into our database because, our database should be a reflection of, we're talking about network, but also net worth. And so that database, as it grows, there's business in there. And it doesn't matter if you're, working in financial services, real estate, or you just have a small mom and pop business.
Yeah.
The more people that are in your database is going to grow.
Absolutely. And a very good example would be like, what if tomorrow someone comes, Kevin, and gives you a check, right? $1 million check for your business.
I'll take it.
Yeah, I know you will take it. but what if they say, here's $1 million check, you're never, ever able to call anyone in your database ever again. Right?
Yeah.
Will you take it?
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I think your network is...
Yeah, we generate a lot more than $1 million off of our database.
You got it.
So
Absolutely.
Yeah, but the question is, could we then take that $1 million check and go somewhere else and start over and rebuild and rebrand what we've already created? And I think people like you and me, because we're not afraid to talk to people and we're not afraid to ask questions, I think we could go into a different market and equally be successful.
Absolutely.
If we're talking like leaving Lake Nona and going to another city.
Yeah.
Not, starting like a branch office or anything like that. And because I think it's meeting with people, it's connecting, asking questions, and just finding what you have in common ground, and building on that. So Felipe, for current business owners, they're established, 2025, depending on perspective, the financial world is, we've seen losses in the stock market. Like, what are you projecting and seeing out there for business owners and individuals in 2025?
Well, you asked me that because we've noticed a trend. There's a trend of these private equity firms and groups that are taking an eye on Texas and Florida mainly to go and buy businesses. And I think the reason that's happening is because a lot of these big funds like BlackRock and Vanguard, they've made massive investments on the real estate markets of Texas and Florida over the last 10 years. So I think what's happening now is like, okay, well, we can't keep developing at the same rate that we were developing before, and too many funds have their hands on it. So they don't know where else to invest. And I think these private equity firms, what they're doing is they're going, grabbing, and buying all these different businesses. I've seen exits of 6 times, 8 times their EBITDA, and then all of a sudden they're conglomerating into different companies and making one bigger company, and they're selling it up to like a bigger fund like BlackRock, for example, and stuff like that. So I think that's a big trend. That if you're an established business owner, that is something that you should absolutely sit down with a financial planner, financial advisor, take a look at what you've built in your business. And I would look for a financial planning team that has the tools and the software and the network to be able to value your company with a detailed KPI analysis to tell you exactly what you need to do for you to be able to exit your business. And I think now we're in a really good time over there. I think this is going to be a trend of 5 to 10 years in Florida, that if you own a business and you're pretty well established, you should take advantage of this trend that is happening.
And I'm just going to go out on a limb and guess that you and your team, you can actually evaluate and give a financial price tag on a current business.
Absolutely. So. Yeah, that's part of the planning that we do for our clients.
Awesome. Well, Felipe, thank you so much for joining me today. If you would like to connect with Felipe and his team, make sure you use the number and the email address and the website below to connect with him and his team, and make sure you tell them Kevin sent you. Until next time, I'll see you soon.